Hello and welcome to the show. If you live here in the Wenatchee Valley, you know this is a pretty special place, filled with entrepreneurs, some of them trying to help us find ways to get and stay in shape, including my guest today, Roxy Whitehead. She's the owner of Valkyrie Fitness, a new aerial yoga and kettlebell studio. I gave it a try. It's lots of fun. Roxy, thank you for being here. I haven't seen you outside of your studio, so we both look a little more put together
Yeah,
in terms of like our hair and our clothing. But thanks for being here so much.
of course, my pleasure. I know
Uh,
it's nice to have an excuse to not just wear workout clothes for once.
well, we don't have to show what's on our bottom half. It's
I'm definitely
probably
still wearing leggings.
yes, exactly. I when I found out about your aerial yoga studio, say that fast. I was really intrigued because I always love it when something is brought to our valley that
Yeah,
seems like something you could only get in a city.
yeah,
And I right away, a friend invited me and I right away went and loved it. So let's just talk about your background a little bit in yoga and what got you to this point. Cause I know what the
yeah,
very first time I reached out to you said, this is a dream come true for me. So
yeah,
I'm all about wanting to share people who are making their dreams come true. So thanks again for being here.
yeah, of course, my pleasure. So, my background, I guess my background in yoga started in high school. That's the first time I started doing yoga because I had back pain. My back pain was actually not related to anything yoga could fix. I actually had a tumor at the base of my spine. That's a whole other story. But also a big part of the reason why health and fitness is so important to me. So I started doing yoga when I was probably 17. Went through college, did not focus on fitness as a career option. It's just one of those things that fitness doesn't seem like a career option. Like I was like, get a degree, get a desk job, and I was terribly unhappy in a desk job. I'm not the type of person who can sit
What were
still.
you seeking for your degrey at that time?
International relations,
Okay.
actually. So political
Okay.
science. I thought I wanted to be a diplomat.
Huh?
But then I moved to South Korea for a year, and dated somebody who lived on the base and who worked for in diplomacy, and realized I really didn't like that lifestyle.
Mhm.
So I came back, got a desk job, did not like a desk job, was just unhappy with sitting all the time. And so I had this idea that I had back in high school. I'm like, what if I became a personal trainer? So I just decided to pursue it. I just decided to go for it and
And
became a
you mean
personal
like a
trainer.
traditional personal trainer, not teaching yoga, but more like
Correct.
in a gym setting or
Yep.
weights
And
and
so that
cardio?
was
Yeah.
my initial foray into this industry,
Mhm.
was as a personal trainer. And you had kind of asked me earlier, and we'll get into this a little bit more, why kettlebells and aerial yoga? Because I love weights too.
Mhm. Right. You don't
You
want to
need
give up
both.
one for the other.
And in the 10 years that I've been in this industry, I've been a personal trainer. I've taught a wide variety of different fitness classes. I'm a nutrition coach. I was the operations manager at my last gym, so I do have some history with managing gyms. Um, and yeah, so when I moved out here a few years ago, I kept complaining about how my ideal studio just didn't exist here.
Right.
Um, my favorite things are kettlebells and aerial yoga. I can get into like how I discovered those a while back, but kettlebells and aerial yoga are my favorite things, and I have that set up at my home, but it's
Let's
not
talk
the
about that.
same.
Let me stop you there just for a second because let's assume that people like me, I mean, I have an idea of what aerial yoga is because I
Yes.
understand what aerial means.
Yeah.
But for people who have never taken an aerial yoga class like I had not,
Yeah.
what is it? And well, just if you can describe it for us.
Sure. So when people think of aerial, there's different things that they might be picturing. I think when you say aerial, a lot of people will think of circus and performing arts. Um, and in that kind of aerial, there tends to be one anchor point with two separate strands of fabric. We call them silks. And people climb up really high. Like usually you need at least 20-foot ceilings for that. And that's how high you tend to climb in those silks. And it is a very high level of fitness that you need just to like really get started in something like that. It takes a lot of strength and mobility. And then there is an aerial sling, which is also a single anchor point, but it's a loop, like a hammock. That tends to be used more for dance because it has a single anchor point. It can rotate and spin. And then there's aerial hammock, which has 2 anchor points, and then it's a loop, and that's what we have at our studio. And so with 2 anchor points, it's a lot more stable. There's not as much twisting and rotation, which I feel is a lot better for beginners. And we have different levels in our studio, and I can get more into that, but in our level 1 classes,
which is as far as I've gotten. That's as far as I've gotten.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'll be there for a while, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and we just started offering level 2 classes, and level 3 classes will come someday, but I need to get enough members comfortable first. But yeah, so for me, the aerial hammock is a lot more beginner friendly. It can be, most classes are taught with a hammock at hip height, but they can be taught with a hammock at knee height, like our restorative classes are taught at that height. We do have like one other more active class that's taught at that height. And that's even more beginner friendly because you're spending most of the class on the ground using the hammock as a prop.
Okay. So, and then the kettlebell, most of us, I mean, for those of us who aren't familiar with what a kettlebell is, will you describe it?
Sure.
I'll use terms that don't make sense.
Yeah, it's a kettlebell. And so it kind of if you imagine the shape of a cowbell,
right?
Kind of like that. Exactly. I don't remember the exact origin, so don't quote me on this, but I know that it came from Russia, the kettlebell did. And I do think it is based off of a cowbell, but I don't remember the specifics. So if you can imagine like a big circle with a handle that kind of looks like a triangle. That's what a kettlebell is.
It's like welded. I mean, it's heavy duty.
Yeah.
It's not,
absolutely.
It's very solid. And I have a 5-pound kettlebell and I have a 25-pound kettlebell. Yeah. So it really varies and it depends on what you're doing with it.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk specifically about your studio and the challenges that you overcame to bring it here to our valley. Okay. We're talking with Roxy, and we'll be back in just a moment. We're back talking with Roxy from Valkyrie Fitness. You are the owner, and we were talking about how this was your dream to bring something like it here. Yeah. Now we've described what aerial fitness is and kettlebell fitness. So let's talk about what challenges did you face as an entrepreneur and business owner bringing the studio? Because you had to have certain equipment, you had to have the right location for the higher ceilings, all the things.
Yeah. Overall, I think the biggest challenge was just committing to doing it.
Making the decision, right?
Yeah, that was the first challenge that I definitely had to overcome, and probably the biggest one. I'd say that one took me a year from when I decided, like when I realized this needed to happen to when I was ready to make it happen.
What do you think happens in between for people who are watching, who have thoughts and ideas about what they want to do, and there's something holding them back, and then suddenly it really comes with the decision making?
Yeah.
I find setting a finish line, I don't use the word deadline, helps, because then you're obligated in some way, financial or otherwise. But what was it for you?
This gets personal.
Oh, well, you don't have to share it if you don't want to.
No, it's okay. Just warning. My husband and I had been trying to conceive, and I am infertile because of the whole tumor situation I briefly mentioned before. And I got at a point where I needed a break. That's why, from idea to starting to take action, that's where that year was for the most part for me. And I got to a point where I was tired of waiting for it to happen.
Right.
So being an entrepreneur takes a lot of guts, right? It's a big risk. It's a big time consumption thing. And I think everyone needs something that ignites that spark. that, kickstarts that push, because it's a big push. And that's what it was for me. I just was tired of living my life for the future. It was time to live my life for now. The future will come whether or not I start this business, and I will just be older and busier then. So
Right.
might as well let that spark carry me through and create this.
It's true. I mean, I'm all about not waiting. I have a whole nonprofit called the Don't Wait Project. So I understand that there's a lot of things that get in our way. And I talk about that too. When I talk about the Don't Wait Project, it is about revisiting the things that we wanted for our lives. And we get busy or overwhelmed or comfortable, or we have something like what you've been through that kind of gets in the way of, kind of makes you question your path or what's next for you. So I really like to share stories like yours of people who, yep, I faced all of that. And yeah, I got to keep moving forward. So I appreciate you sharing that part of your story.
Yeah.
Now with the studio then, because how high are the ceilings in there, or how high is
17 feet.
Okay. So
the ceilings are 17 feet. The truss, which is the big steel metal frame that we have in there, that is where the hammocks are suspended from, is 14 feet at the top, 13 at the bottom.
Yeah. So you needed a specific type of space.
Yeah. Well, when I was looking, that's definitely like one of the key factors, or how high are the ceilings. And you can do aerial yoga, because again, I'm not doing aerial circus. I didn't need super high ceilings. But I was looking for something that was at least 12-foot ceilings. And my original plan was to get an engineer in there and put in anchors into the ceiling. Like they might have to add in beams and support and all of that. But that's what most aerial yoga studios do. Is they just find something with at least 12-foot high ceilings and they bolt into the ceiling. And then I just wasn't finding anything that kind of like gave me the vibe that I wanted. Like there were some commercial space buildings, but they were just kind of bland. And then I found this space, which is a 100-year-old building, an old fruit packing building, mostly brick walls, huge floor ceiling windows, 17-foot high ceilings. And I was like, this space feels like the space. But then it's with a 100-year-old building, and if you look at the ceilings closely, which nobody does because there's a big truss there, it's not even like, I don't know the right way to describe it, just like a real ceiling. It's like plastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've only noticed it when I'm laying in the hammock and I'm looking straight up. Yeah.
There would be no way to anchor into that. So I found this space. I knew it was the one. And I was like, okay, how do I put aerial yoga in here if I can't anchor it into the ceiling? And so I started doing research online, and I found this company that they're called, oh my God, I can't believe I'm blanking on this. Aerial Arts something, I can look it up. But they custom design trusses for aerial yoga, for aerial circus, for pole, for all sorts of aerial parts. And so I reached out to them and they designed this for me. They shipped all of the pieces over, which was really fun because we're on a second story and
I know.
carry it all
and
up
those
the stairs.
steps are no joke, they're pretty steep.
Yeah. And then they flew out and they helped us put it all together.
Oh, good. I was going to
put it all
ask
together
that.
with manual labor only. There were no machines involved in the raising of that 14-foot structure.
Well, when I saw the structure, I had respect for it right away. I didn't know the details of what you just shared, but it seemed very solution-based.
Yeah.
And it fits the space.
It does.
It does fit the space. And I don't just mean fits physically. It fits the vibe of the space. It doesn't take anything away from, it doesn't take anything away from the brick walls and the windows and all of that. And then the kettle studio is right next to it.
Yes.
And I haven't taken any of the kettlebell classes yet, but I will. And I like kettlebell as well. And so one of the things, let's take a quick break. When we come back, I just want to explain to people what the benefits are.
Sure.
How is it different from regular yoga, and what people can expect if they were to take any type of class like this. I know for me, when my friend called and said, "Oh, aerial yoga," I just immediately pictured the singer Pink, who did the whole silk thing with the Grammys
Oh
years
yeah.
ago that I've watched many, many times. It was so beautifully done. And I realized this is very different.
Yes.
And I have a respect for that kind of
Yeah.
precision and work that went into something like that. For those who haven't seen it, you can check it out. It's Pink, the singer, who did a performance on the Grammys, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
Just
I haven't
absolutely
seen that. I'll
amazing.
have to look at it.
Amazing. Yes. So let's take a break. I'm talking with Roxy, and she is the owner of Valkyrie Fitness, and we're talking all things aerial yoga and kettlebell. We'll be back in just a moment. We're back. I'm talking with Roxy, the owner of Valkyrie Fitness. We've been talking about aerial yoga and kettlebell, and but your studio includes both, separate rooms for it. What I want to explain here now to people who we've explained what it is, but I think for me, I thought, okay, I expected to see some really, gifted yoga folks in there who've been doing yoga for a long time. And I don't want to stereotype anyone, but I know exactly what I thought I'd see when I got in there. And I saw people of all shapes and sizes, of all ages, just like myself. And I felt comfortable right away.
Yeah.
Now, it's just like anything that we practice and we do again and again. There is some extra element of a learning curve, because we're not just on the ground. We're having to learn how to use the silks and all of the things. And the first time that I was upside down, it just takes this extra bit of caution and confidence to know that you can do these sorts of things. And every instructor I've met there has been really patient and helpful.
Yeah.
So let's just talk for people who are thinking aerial yoga, no way, expecting to be doing these interesting things from the ceiling. You can bring the hammock down as low as you'd like, or as high as makes it useful.
Yeah.
So how do we put people at ease who would like to try something like this, but think it's not for me because I have this issue or that issue? And I have major lower back issues. And I'll tell you that one day that I came and you said, let's just focus on lower back for people who sit for work a lot. The stretching and the options and the modifications are numerous. So let's speak to those folks.
Sure.
Like myself.
And I'm going to say first that that's the primary reason why I have a level system for the aerial yoga.
And that means that when we come in, you can adjust them based on where we either just our height or our comfort.
If you look at our class description, at the end of every class, we'll say L1, L2, or L3. Like, our classes are in levels. And so and I have different, maybe standards is the right word, but requirements for my instructors that they know to follow when it comes to teaching at different levels. At a level 1 class, my goal is for 99% of people to be able to do 99% of the poses. So we really do make our level 1 classes more as inclusive as possible. When people come into the studio, if it's their first class, we have the instructor guide them on how high or low to set their hammock, as you were talking about. It should be at roughly hip height. If you are more flexible, you might want a little higher. If you are less flexible, you might want a little lower. Like, we often have people practice getting their foot in and out of the hammock and being able to do a forward fold over the hammock to make sure it's a good height for them. And let people know that we have what we call a 3-class rule. It takes roughly 3 classes to find out how high you like the hammock, to get used to the feeling of the swaying, to get comfortable with the inversions. And we really try to normalize the fact that this is a very different thing for people to be doing. And in level 1, we try to be as understanding and encompassing of where everyone is coming from when they come to that class. And in our level 2, it gets harder. In level 2, it's still a yoga class. It still has a flow and a cadence. We're still doing yoga postures using the hammock as a prop, but we start planning our flows around peak poses. So there's 2 or 3 poses that involve a little more effort, where we start to climb or we start to do different wraps. And then our level 3 classes, which we don't teach yet, we're still in month, it's been 2.5 months since we've been open, so we don't have enough people who are ready for level 3 yet. But when we do, level 3 will be more of, I think, what people stereotype this to be. In other words, we'll have like a 20-minute warm up and then like a 40-minute workshop where we're learning all of these different tricks and poses. And that's when it starts to look a little bit more like performance based. But that's just, I think everyone assumes that's where you start. But that's, at our studio at least, that's where you finish.
Yes. Well,
And it's optional. Not everyone will go there.
Right.
When I went to my previous aerial yoga studio, level 2 classes were my jam. I never did level 3 classes. It wasn't what I went there for. I wanted yoga with a little bit of playfulness.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that that's the point I wanted to make for folks, because I've had lower back issues since I was 17 years old. And so the idea that I can keep one leg on the ground and stretch really, really far with my other leg kind of hinged in the hammock is something you just can't easily achieve without that silk.
Yeah.
And some of the positions are things I couldn't achieve in any other position, any other way, getting in that position.
Yeah.
Inversion means upside down.
Yeah.
if you don't know that, that's what it means. And I don't hang around upside down at home. But it is this release that you feel. It's not weightless, but it feels pretty close.
Supported.
It's supported depending on the position that you're in. And I'm not any good at it. But what I thought about it when I decided to go is that if this is something I could get good at, then it would be encompassing of all different facets of my life as it relates to fitness and ability.
In aerial yoga, it's more mobility focused, but you'll get stronger doing it. With kettlebells, it's more strength focused, but you'll gain mobility doing it. That's one of the reasons why they pair so well to me. Another is that they are both, for me, more playful than the traditional version of yoga or weightlifting. Yeah.
Well, I think the combination of the two, I trust your judgment, but it makes absolute sense what you're saying about getting both of what you need. And that is another thing that I think that it's a creative idea that you brought to the Valley, to have under one roof. Well, 2 rooms, but under that roof. So, well, thank you for being here. I really appreciate you sharing your story and being transparent and offering such a unique way for folks in the Valley to get and stay fit. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for reaching out.